So I'm looking very much forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Morning, everybody. Just get my clicker. So thanks very much for the introduction, and also to see there's so many people here today, which is really fantastic to see such a variety of research work going on for CCS. I'm going to talk about the money stuff for this, the business model side of it. So this is really what I have to do, as justify the investments that we make in CCS and also low-carbon solutions to our shareholders and to our stakeholders of why we can actually make a sustainable business model in the future. But before I do that, I'll sort of contextualize a little bit about our business in New Energy Solutions, which is the unit that has both all the sustainability work towards actually real business solutions, so offshore wind, solar, energy storage, plus low carbon as well, including CCS and hydrogen. So just from a business driver point of view, the energy transition, I think, it does provide probably the largest wealth opportunity in history. I think definitively there will be winners and losers in the energy transition. As Equinor, we hope to be on the winner side of this thing, but we do see this as a glass half full opportunity for us. The growth rates, particularly within the renewables side, is phenomenal. So if you think of oil and gas, it grows about 1% a year. It is basically, it's a normal story, particularly for oil, whereas you have offshore wind, for example, that's grown 15% a year for the last 7 years, and is continuing in that sector as well. So strong growth rates, excite us and obviously excite our shareholders as well. When it comes to capabilities in the business, then you see that this is something for a large oil and gas company to transform to be a broad energy company, is that there's elements of capabilities we simply don't have. So we need to acquire those, we need to build them, we need to develop them either in-house, or we need to pull them in from other ways as well. And it's not just on a technology point of view, but it's a business model point of view as well. This is a completely different business model approach within the renewable sector than it is, for example, the oil and gas sector. Two very different markets for us, and particularly we're a company that is not used to power markets. This is something for Statkraft and other companies around the Eons and the Vattenfalls in the world, but this is something that we're being more and more exposed to in our business. On a resilience point of view, on a portfolio level, carbon, particularly sort of carbon risks in the portfolio is something we're fully aware of, as our shareholders are in addition. So building some long-term, future-appropriate major projects in the portfolio is going to be key for us in the future. So on the challenges side, scale is important for us here. As a sort of company with 20,000 employees, we need a scalable business model. We can't do a bunch of one-offs. And we can't do rooftop solar in Texas and bang on people's door and after they would like to stick some solar panels on their roof. It's not going to work for us. So we have to do sort of utility scale kind of approach to things and actually see that that business model is fully scalable. The returns are different. I'm not saying they're worse or better. They're different to oil and gas. And obviously there's a risk-adjusted rate of return related to this. And also there is support systems. They may stay, they may go. There is a massive change in the market. So returns in themselves is something actually which is really important for us to actually understand our portfolio approach between oil, gas, international oil, onshore oil, offshore, deep water. We see this as a portfolio point of view, and you can put low carbon and renewables in that space as well. Competition is super intense in the renewables business. We always thought it was intense in oil and gas. That's my background for the last 17 years. It is so tough in these auctions. It is sometimes a race to the bottom in many of them. There are many that have rates of return which are quite, we probably find hard to justify. For certain companies, they have different expectations on the business, or they're just taking strategic bets in the future. So actually managing between this and actually understand that we need to make money in this business sustainably is really important for us. Finally, on the culture side of it as well, where I work in New Energy Solutions, and it's really politically correct to work in that unit. My wife is shocked I have such a politically correct job, but it is the place where we attract the most people. By far, we get the most applications with the New Energy Solutions. But our point of view is that we're bringing in a lot of people with outside expertise who've never worked in oil and gas or ever dreamed of working in oil and gas. They work in renewables and had done. But when we bring them into the business, they see that there's a broader opportunity set for them globally. So it's not either or with renewables versus low carbon versus oil and gas. It's both and. And I think we've got some ideas around that one too. So this is the strategic pitch, as it were, for New Energy Solutions. And this is Equinor's strategy. It's not just a New Energy Solution strategy. really important for us to build this profitable renewables business. It has to have rates of return that we think are right for the industry, that we can actually justify investing in this business, and that we have to be a top quartile player in this one. It has to be, there's no doubt about it. Offshore wind is a key growth area for us. It has many of the elements that we have within oil and gas as well, similar supply chain, large complicated projects, difficult weather conditions, all the stuff we love. We can build this together within the company, and we're really pushing that hard as well. But also we're looking into solar. We have 2 solar projects already ongoing. We have energy storage. We're looking at onshore wind, and we're looking at packaging things together. And that leads to the sort of the middle part here, market-driven power producer. Electricity markets are something fairly new for our company, which sounds a bit strange because we actually use a lot of electricity for all our operations globally. But we're actually not used to selling this out in the market. So we did acquire a company called Danske Commodities, which is a very extremely sort of efficient trading company who are looking into arbitrage, spreads, power purchase agreements, offtakes, to actually take some of that skill set in the power markets and bring it in there, connect it to our business. So we do the upstream stuff, we produce the electrons, they go out there and trade it and get the best value they can for us. It's really important for us because this is the phenomenally growth markets you're seeing. With the more renewables coming into the mix, you're seeing more volatility within power prices, and that's something that we need to be on the front end of. Lastly, low carbon business opportunities. This is related to CCS in particular. It's related to hydrogen. I'll come back to that as well. But also it's about decarbonizing the rest of our business as well, whether that's our LNG plant in Melkøya in Norway, or whether it's Mongstad, or whether it's other operations around the world, that we need to reduce our own CO2 emissions from our own operations. So Northern Lights, or as we call it, this name, the Northern Lights, really is for this project. I think everybody's had a slide about it, but let me sort of try and explain the business model for it. I'll back it up. First of all, this is built off really ideas being developed and talked about with the Ministry of Petroleum in Norway. We were looking at the Peterhead option in the UK, which got dragged from us by George Osborne at the last minute. So, everyone's had their fingers burnt within CCS projects, put it that way. What we see with the development of this particular project is clearly a public-private partnership relationship to try and come with a open source concept for CCS. So again, we've talked about the 2 plants, a waste capture plant in Oslo, the cement plant down in Porsgrunn, collecting CO2 there to underpin the first phase of the business model, liquefy the CO2, store it down off the west coast on the Norwegian continental shelf. And then the key part about this one is it has to be a scalable business model. There is just not enough CO2 in Norway from industrial point emissions to actually justify that model itself. But there's plenty, obviously, of CO2 opportunities in Rotterdam, in Teesside, Germany, really much the whole of the North Sea basin. You see opportunities there. So underpinning this with a third-party business is going to be extremely important. That's the business model for us. We want to actually see if we can make money out of a long-term carbon capture and storage solution here. There are many elements with CCUS, the utilization part of it. I think that will have opportunities, particularly in Norway. If we can manage to get this infrastructure up and running and we can run this, I think this will open up a lot more than probably we see today. I think Oscar's going to talk a bit more, some of those points a bit later on. The other part of the business model is that we can earn money if we think we can. If we can get an in-the-money concept at a European CO2 tax. The other part is, well, this does offer for us, but also maybe other users as well, an option to clean our hydrogen. And we've seen that fantastic pitch already on hydrogen for Norway using natural gas and then storing the CO2. This opens up a lot of more opportunities for us in addition. And what's good about hydrogen, in a sense, is that you have this sort of sector cobbling, the German expression for it that we clumsily, translate into English, but it does open up other opportunities. You can use, wherever you use natural gas today, you can use hydrogen. So as long as you can use it with power generation, there's heating markets, there's marine transportation, there could be heavy transportation as well. And it doesn't lock out renewables, it actually backs it up in a sense. You have you can actually have clean hydrogen to work towards renewables in addition. And also you can add in biogas as well, you can add in green hydrogen as well. It opens up many, many possibilities really. And if your goal is to reduce CO2, then you shouldn't be anti-blue hydrogen, from natural gas. So this is the third-party business model idea here. We've modeled CO2 emissions all over Europe. We generally try and focus for Northern Lights in the team around the North Sea basin, which does include the Baltic Sea as well, naturally enough. And what we see here is that definitively the emissions for the main heavy industries, and it's been talked about previously, it is a serious issue for the European Union. ArcelorMittal already has started talking about this, and they've opened up saying that, well, if we're going to produce steel in Europe with low CO2, should we be allowed to import from other countries that don't do the same thing? Do they respect it? So the CO2 barriers or taxes around the EU is a theme that is cooking a little bit in the background. The other part is that, is there a market for low CO2 products? Are local authorities, are governments willing to pay a little bit more for zero CO2 for their cement? And then the actual additional cost on building a hospital or a school or whatever actually is actually just a couple of percent. It's not a lot. And the bigger the market, the stronger this is. But are we going to start pushing this on the sector? We look at this as well. We use a lot of steel. We use a lot of cement in our industry in oil and gas. And we're looking with the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative to look into actually demand for low CO2 products as well in our part of the business. But tackling these hard to decarbonize sector from iron, cement, chemical, etc. This is something, if we want to have those jobs in Europe, and we still want to have growth in that particular sector, rather than importing it all in, then we have to solve for CO2. And then really this is what Northern Lights does here, is we're trying to underpin their business model, these companies' exposure to the European ETS price, the CO2 price, and actually try and give them an option to actually lock in 5 years, 10 years, guaranteed CO2 storage, and we can guarantee that as well with certification. So this is the sort of the clear business model. So particularly the push, as we hope, towards the 5th of September, which Minister Freiberg mentioned about the summit here, is that we're looking for a strong leadership from progressive European industrial companies to actually put this forward and say that Northern Lights is important for their business model. That is essential for them. This is what we need to do to try and push for this. We need EU funding. We need funding from Norway. Industry needs to help fund this as well. We want to try and make it a bankable concept as well, maybe even having European Investment Bank in at one point as well. So if this is a model for the rest of the world, and not just policy, but also technology in addition. This is a roadmap I stole off my friends at Rotvoll, which is our research center, not too far away from here. And really, it's an idea of how can we build a hydrogen value chain. So, the hydrogen market today is actually very, very small. It's just mostly around sort of specialty chemicals. There is a lot of hydrogen produced, but the CO2 is just emitted. A lot of it mostly comes from natural gas as well. Autothermal reforming, steam methane reforming. But let's try and think about it more in a business context. Could you build a business out of hydrogen? So what we're trying to do at the moment, we're solving for at the moment, if we look within Northern Lights. Now, Northern Lights underpins really our strategy around hydrogen. We have a plan B, by the way, in the UK, just so I know, but and in Netherlands. But there's a plan B and C, but plan A is really to try and build around Northern Lights, anchor that business, and then use that as a potential that we can decarbonize natural gas, if customers are willing to pay for it. And then we have what we need to build from this is almost a value chain demonstration. We need the shipping, we need the liquefaction, we need to start to build a market around this one. There could be potential for ferries in Norway, or for example, the military use as well within Norway to try and build a hydrogen concept here, where electric systems aren't working as well. So we need to try and build into this slowly but surely and try and use our existing capacity within Norway and our exposure in Norway to do this. And some of the sort of bigger ticket items, which is more sort of around, we see one called Magnum up here. This is a project that we're looking at in the Netherlands, and it is it's 3 trains of combined cycle gas turbines in Eemshaven in the Netherlands. They're only running about 2 of them at the moment. You could switch those over to hydrogen, or you switch one straight over to hydrogen and still have gas. It all has storage possibility as well. So what we can do here is we could actually take the natural gas in, and we sell them the gas, we decarbonize that, well, then we can take the CO2 back to Norway and store it. The problem with that business model is it's twice as expensive as natural gas today, which either tells you that there's something wrong with the ETS price today, or that there just is not a willingness to pay. But what's important with this one is that the Netherlands is kind of reaching the limits a little bit on its own electricity decarbonization. It's still got more upside for offshore wind, and we're part of that. We compete in those auctions as well for the Netherlands, but it needs to tackle the 80% of the market. And 80% of the global energy market is actually molecules. 20% is just electrons. So decarbonizing the 20% is not going to get us to the Paris target. So we need to start taking on the molecules. This is one of those projects that could do this and has potential to reduce about CO2 by 4 million tons. So you need a lot of wind turbines, to be honest, to try and compensate for that. Other ones as well is H21 in the UK. And this is looking at the existing heating market in the northeast of England, actually all the way over to Manchester as well, where they have currently, they ran on sort of town gas previously, they're running on natural gas now. What could we do if we could put hydrogen boiler systems together and actually use the existing infrastructure already? It has phenomenal value in the sense it really has this element of this one is that there's a scale effect on this one. Potentially a third of UK households could be run on, excuse me, hydrogen, and this has a huge effect really on actually reducing the cost of it, and then we could store the CO2 offshore with a pipeline solution just off the northeast coast of the UK. Exciting solution there. The next phase of this is actually there's a testing, safety testing has to be imperative for this, so the UK Department of Energy is doing two safety sites where they're actually looking using hydrogen boilers in the system and actually looking at what the safety implications are, that one. And then really how does the business model work for this one? That's the bit that we need to help crack for them as well. Last one here, everyone's getting all excited about Angela Merkel, as we should, because when Germany starts to sort of talk about CCS, they think you've made a bit of a breakthrough here. And there's many reasons why you could think that she's mentioned this. The one thing I do is actually the CO2 price. So, I'm often in Poland for work because we have offshore wind projects we're trying to develop there. The CO2 price there is a massive discussion theme. This is not popular. This is quite serious obviously on the coal industry in Poland. So this is an issue about energy transition, that they're looking for gas solutions. They need more onshore wind. They want to have offshore wind at some point as well. It opens up possibilities. This CO2 tax and the squeeze, and particularly the speed it went up when it tightened up the market, has opened up so many more European companies to come and bang on our door and say, we need some help. And if you think of it, for example, companies like Air Liquide, ArcelorMittal, ThyssenKrupp, some of the larger industrial companies in Europe are already paying this tax anyway. And if they think, okay, is this going to go to 50? Is it going to go to 60? Is it going to go to 100 euros or more? Is it a possibility they can lock in for 5 to 10 years in the Northern Lights, where we take hold of their CO2 and manage it for potentially a lower price than the market? That's what we need to work with them on, and that's what we need to try and find particular business models together to try and crack that one. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Before you get this, are there questions? I mean, this is a very interesting and important topic.
Thanks.
There is one up there.
I'll project. On the previous slide, you missed one up at the end, and I wanted to make a comment on that. That was the Japan H2.
Yeah.
I'm an advisor to the Brunei government because they have now got a problem. Because Japan has focused on obtaining hydrogen from gas in Brunei, shipping it to Japan, and then claiming that they're carbon emission free. But didn't bother to tell Brunei that it would mean a massive increase in emissions. So now we're having to renegotiate the plan to try and have some CCS or CCU as part of this. So I caution programs, and I'm involved in some of the UK ones as well, but programs that all they do is push the problem to somebody else. And I think that one at the end, which is part of the Olympics strategy for Japan, is one of those problems where they're not being particularly honest with the people they're getting the hydrogen from.
I think you make an important point. Looking at the total life cycle emissions is extremely important. There's no doubt about it. Hence the part with the U on the CO2 utilization, that we could use it for other products. Well, that back into the atmosphere at some point as well. So I think that's an important one. Which this is the 2030. We throw ideas out here and there. Where they stick, who knows? It's mostly related to policy, technology, and markets. But I think to give an idea on the H21, then we've done the full cycle analysis on that one, and actually what those total emissions are in addition. So I agree it's a really good point you make.
One more question? One final one? Up there?
I have one question regarding hydrogen for power generation. When you see price for renewable are going down, and how do you think hydrogen compares to renewables in 10 years, as you see in the Netherlands project you have there?
So you're thinking about between green hydrogen and blue, or between hydrogen and renewables?
I'm thinking hydrogen compared to wind, solar, all the other renewables. I don't quite see how you can fit hydrogen in the power generation.
Let me, it's probably a bit bad to give another example from the UK, being a Brit, but what we see there, the UK is in some sense at the forefront of an energy transition from an industrial economy towards a full zero carbon economy. And you see that, particularly on strong windy days, that we have 40% wind production there. And then you need to flex the natural gas up and down. And that's great for us. We are the largest seller of natural gas as Equinor into the UK, and it backs up the system particularly well. The problem is there's CO2 emissions coming out of it. Switching that over to hydrogen and giving a flexible hydrogen approach essentially gives a firm power towards the UK market. And I think we've modeled what these look like and how that can work together, plus all the forward-looking algorithms that we have of where we can predict how much where wind's blowing and where in the UK and where we need power. So I think this is an important part to sort of link between it and the power market here. It's similar for the Netherlands as well. And I think you see in particular, even just recently in Europe, we had European prices were down for about minus for about 3 or 4 hours, and they went flying up to about €1,000, and then down again for about 3 or 4 minutes. Now this volatility going up and down here, how you manage that one with backups of hydrogen is going to be really important in the future.
I think we'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.